Okay, so this is fifth grade English context clues. Um, sorry. Sorry about that. Um, this was the class meant for January 9th, 2026. Today we'll be learning about context clues. Let's start our learning. Before we begin, make sure you have paper and a pen or pencils to write with. You don't have to write down everything that is on the screen. However, you should take notes on what you think is important and write down the answers to any questions I ask. For instance, it would be good to write down definitions of words as they are taught to you. If I'm moving too fast, you can pause the video and rewatch parts since this isn't a live. And if you have any questions, you can ask me in the next class. Just write down what your question is, and you can ask me in the next class at the beginning. Today, we are learning about how strong readers handle unfamiliar words. You don't need a dictionary for every new word, although it is a good resource. Instead, you should use clues that the author gives you. Before we begin, let's talk about what you should be able to do by the end of class. You will understand what context clues are and why they matter, learn that there are different types of context clues, and most importantly, you will practice using sentences to guess the meaning of new words. If you can do these three things by the end of today's class, you would have met today's goal. So basically, today is all about context clues. You'll be learning the different methods that you can use to identify the context clues and help you read. And you will be practicing with example sentences. What are context clues? Context clues are hints that an author includes to help the reader. They are found in the words and ideas around an unfamiliar word. Let's try one together. The arid climate with very little rainfall made it difficult for plants to grow. The word arid might be new. What clues help us? What do you think arid means? Discuss for 2 minutes with the people around you to try to figure out what the word means. Again, the word is arid, and this is the sentence. With the arid climate with very little rainfall made it difficult for plants to grow. You get 2 minutes to figure out what the word means and write it down. Okay. The answer is arid means dry. We can assume this by the context clue in the sentence that says very little rainfall. Here it says the arid climate with very little rainfall made it difficult for plants to grow. If there's very little rainfall, it's obvious that plants would have it difficult to grow, and very little rainfall means dry, so that means the climate was dry. If the climate is arid because of the lack of rainfall, the lack of rainfall causes the arid climate. We can assume that arid means dry. Why do context clues matter? Context clues help us read faster, help us understand better, and they keep us from stopping while reading to search up a word because they give clues as to what the word means. They help us better understand what is happening. For example, she was exhausted after the marathon and could barely remain upright. In the above sentence, what does it mean to barely remain upright? What is going on here? Take 2 minutes to discuss the answer with your classmates around you. Here we have a phrase meaning barely, which says barely remain upright. Your job is to try to figure out what that means based on the sentence, which says she was exhausted after the marathon and could barely remain upright. You can take 2 minutes to discuss the answer with your classmates around you. Okay. The answer is that if she's barely remaining upright, that means that she is having trouble staying standing up. We can guess this by the context clues that say she's exhausted after running a marathon. Here it says she was exhausted after the marathon. By the way, a marathon is a really long running race where a lot of people come together and run together for a long distance. If someone ran for a really long time, they would be tired and not want to stay standing. So that's how we know that barely remaining upright means that she is having trouble staying standing up because she is tired. Okay. How do we guess a word? To guess the meaning of an unfamiliar word, you must read the whole sentence, look for clues, and ask what makes sense. Guessing is not random, it's based on logic and clues. By reading the whole sentence, you can find the clues in the sentence, right? That's how you look for clues. And then you need to ask yourself, you need to think logically what makes sense. For example, in this sentence, it says, the teacher was pleased with the students' diligent work and praised their effort. What clues help us understand the word diligent? Take 2 minutes to discuss with the people around you what diligent means based on the clues of the sentence. So follow these steps, read over the sentence, Look for the clues as to what diligent means and ask yourself what makes sense. If you already know the definition of diligent, find the clues and write down what the clues are. Okay, time is up. Let's discuss this together. The answer is that if the students are working diligently, it means they are putting effort into their work and they are being careful in their work. This assumption can be made from the fact that the teacher is pleased. That tells us that something positive is happening, something good is happening. If someone is pleased, it means that they're happy. Their effort is praised, so they must have worked hard on their schoolwork. So diligently means working hard and putting effort into their work. It also means being careful in their work. If you work diligently, it means that you are working hard with your work and that you're being careful with your work. It is positive. Next, strategy 1. So there are different strategies of context clues. We have 4 or 5 total, and the first strategy is definition clues. Sometimes the definition is right there in the text. You just have to find it. It's when the meaning is explained in the sentence, and when the definition is included, commas or the word means are often used. Example 1. A habitat, or the natural home of an animal, provides everything it needs to survive. In the above sentence, what does habitat mean? Discuss the answer with the people around you. You get 2 minutes for this. So the key word here, the word that you need to find the definition of is habitat, and then based on the sentence, you need to figure out what it means. You get 2 minutes, starting now. You are halfway through your time. It has been 1 minute. If you have already finished, write down what habitat means and write down how you know that based on the sentence. Okay, time is up. Let's discuss this together. The answer is a habitat is the natural home of an animal. We know this because the definition was stated exactly after the word was used. The use of the comma followed by the word or tells us that habitat and the natural home of an animal can be used interchangeably. It means that they mean the same thing, meaning that one is the definition of the other, right? So here it says habitat, and then you see the comma. It's separated by the comma, and then it has or. It means that they mean the same thing, meaning that this is a definition, the natural home of an animal. So therefore, that is the definition. That's what a definition clue is. It's when the definition is inside the sentence or the text of what you're reading. We have a second example here. In this sentence, it says, after hearing the good news, Maya was ecstatic. That's how you pronounce it. It's ecstatic. Make sure you practice how to pronounce these words, by the way. After hearing the good news, Maya was ecstatic, comma, thrilled beyond belief. This comma here is a huge clue. In the above sentence, what does ecstatic mean? Discuss the answer with the people around you. I'll give you around 2 minutes for this one as well, and after that, we'll discuss what it means, and why it means that. Okay, we are about 1 minute through our time. You get 1 more minute. If you have finished early, then write down what ecstatic means and how you know it. Okay, your time is up. The answer is ecstatic means thrilled beyond belief. We know this since the definition is given directly after the use of the word, and it's separated by a comma. Remember how I told you that the comma is a huge clue? Right after it says Maya was ecstatic, it says thrilled beyond belief. That means ecstatic means thrilled beyond belief. So the definition is right there in the sentence. If you're really happy and thrilled beyond belief, that means that you're ecstatic. Now we're moving on to our second strategy, which is synonym clues. First we had definition clues, now we have synonym clues. The definition of synonym is a word or phrase that means exactly or nearly the same as another word or phrase in the same language. For example, shut is a synonym of close. If you're shutting something, it also means you're closing something. It means the same thing. Sometimes, in a sentence with an unfamiliar word, you can find a context clue with a synonym to hint at the meaning of the confusing word. So basically, what this means is that if you have a sentence and you have an unfamiliar word, sometimes there will be another word that means the same thing as the unfamiliar word, and based on that, you can guess the definition of the confusing word. Here in our first example, it says the child was elated, joyful about winning the contest. Now, the word elated might be a new word for you, so let's look for clues in this sentence. What does elated mean based on this sentence and using synonym clues? Discuss with those around you for 2 minutes. If you finish early, then write down what elated means and how you know what it means. Starting now. Okay, we're halfway through our time. If you've already finished, please write down what elated means and how you know what it means. For example, write down the synonym that's in the sentence that tells you what elated means. Okay, let's discuss this together. The answer is elated means joyful or very happy. This can be assumed by the synonym joyful being used directly after elated, separated by a comma. Also, anyone would be very happy after winning a contest. So looking at the logic here, they won the contest, right? And they were elated. That means it's positive. Elated has to be positive because they won the contest. Anyone would be positive. After, it's separated by a comma and it says joyful after it says elated. That means joyful means very happy. So that means elated also must mean very happy. The synonyms are joyful and elated and they mean the same thing, therefore we know the definition of elated. That is what a synonym clue is. It's when there's a word that means the same thing and tells you what the confusing word means. Now let's go on to our second example. In example 2, it says here, the path was treacherous, dangerous because of the loose rocks and steep drop. What does treacherous mean based on the sentence and using synonym clues? So you have to use specifically the synonym clues. Discuss with those around you for 2 minutes. We are halfway through our time. If you have finished already, make sure you write down what treacherous means and how you know what it means. Make sure you also write the synonym of the word that's in the sentence. Okay, let's discuss this together. The answer is treacherous means dangerous. This can be assumed by the synonym dangerous used directly after treacherous, separated by a comma. Also, loose rocks and a steep drop are obviously described as dangerous. So if you're going on a path and there's loose rocks and a steep drop, if the if you step on one of the loose rocks, it can be dangerous because you might fall down the drop, right? That's why it's described as dangerous. That's logic. Now it says treacherous before dangerous and it's separated by a comma. So these two are synonyms. Treacherous and dangerous mean almost the same thing. Therefore, treacherous means dangerous. So that is synonym clues. Again, to tie back, if you don't understand this definition, I'll tell you a simpler one. A synonym is basically two words that mean the same thing. Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is our third strategy, which is antonym clues. You might notice antonym sounds similar to synonym. That's because an antonym is the opposite of a synonym. An antonym is a word or phrase that is opposite in meaning to another word or phrase in the same language. For example, bad and good. Bad and good are both opposites, and therefore they are antonyms. Opposites can help us understand the definition of unfamiliar words. You can identify the antonym of it. If it shows, you can identify an antonym if it shows contrast between two things, and if they use words like but or unlike. In our first example, it says, unlike his gregarious brother, Mark was always quiet and reserved. Now, we can identify an antonym if it shows contrast, one thing, and uses the word but or unlike. Here, remember how it says unlike? Here, this example uses the word unlike, so there must be an antonym to gregarious in here. You have to find that antonym, and based off of the antonym, guess what the word gregarious means. Discuss what gregarious might mean with the people around you. You get 2 minutes, and if you finish early, make sure you write down the definition of gregarious and how you know the definition based on the sentence. Your time starts now. We're halfway through the time. Make sure you write down what you think it means and why. Okay, let's discuss this together. The answer is gregarious must mean outgoing because it is the opposite of quiet and reserved. Since the word unlike is used, we know that Marcus is not gregarious. Unlike his gregarious brother, Mark was always quiet and reserved. So if he's not gregarious, it means that he's quiet. Here it says he's quiet and reserved. If his brother is gregarious and he is the opposite of gregarious, that means that gregarious must mean outgoing, right? It means that you're not quiet and not reserved, and the antonym of that is outgoing. Now let's go to the second example. The room was normally chaotic, but today it was calm and orderly. Discuss what chaotic might mean with the people around you. Now, this is more of a common word, so if you already know the word, you can just write down what it means and why you think it means that based on the sentence and based on the clues you are given. Make sure you write down the antonym and explain why the antonym tells you what chaotic means. Your time starts now. If you've already found out why, make sure you write it down. We're halfway through the time. One more minute left. Okay, your time is up. Let's discuss this together. The answer is chaotic must mean messy, loud, or out of control. This can be assumed from the fact that the word but is used, implying that there is an antonym. If today was calm and orderly and the rest of the time was the opposite, which is chaotic, then chaotic must mean messy and unorderly. Here, if you look in the sentence, the word but is used here. The room was normally chaotic, meaning that if it's normally chaotic, it's always chaotic. But today, if it's different from all days, it says calm and orderly. Calm and orderly should be the opposite, which meaning it's the antonym of chaotic because the word but is used, right? So chaotic must mean messy and unorderly. The opposite of calm and orderly is messy and unorderly, right? Okay, let's go to the fourth strategy. Our fourth strategy is example clues. So far, we have had definition clues, synonym clues, and antonym clues. Now we have example clues. Examples can help us find the meaning of the word because they explain the word. Examples are powerful clues. The examples often come following the phrase such as or like. Example 1. Celestial objects such as the sun, moon, and stars filled the night sky. What is a celestial object and how did you come to your conclusion? Discuss with the people around you. So you need to figure out what celestial objects are based on this sentence here using example clues. If you already know what it means, then write down how you know what it means and based on the sentence why it means what it does. Your time starts now. You're 1 minute through. Make sure you write down what you think the answer is and why. Okay, time is up. Let's discuss this together. The answer is a celestial object is an object in the sky or in space. We know this because all examples have one thing in common. They're all in space. Here, the examples we have are the sun, the moon, and the stars in the night sky. There are different types of objects that are in the sky. There are different types of objects that are in space, right? So these examples tell us what a celestial object is because they all have one thing in common. When you have example clues, you need to look at all the examples and think about what they have in common to figure out what your keyword means. In this case, we know that sun, moon, and stars all have one thing in common. They are all in space. So celestial object must mean objects that are in the sky or in space. Our next example is it says the museum displayed many artifacts, including ancient tools, pottery, and coins from early civilizations. What are artifacts and how did you come to your conclusion? Discuss this with the people around you for 2 minutes, and if you finish early, make sure that you write down why you think it means, what you think artifacts means, and why you think it means that based on the sentence. Your time starts now. You are 1 minute through your time. Make sure you start writing down your answers and why you think artifacts mean what it does. Okay, let's discuss this together. Okay, sorry about that. Let's discuss this together. Here, our main word is artifacts, and an artifact must mean an object that is made by humans in the past, especially ones that are historically important. How do we know this? Well, it can be assumed from the examples, all of which have one thing in common. They were all made or used by humans and they're all ancient. Here, the artifacts that were the examples are ancient tools, pottery, and coins from early civilizations. Early civilizations means a long time ago when humans first started making their communities and civilizations. So the tools that they use, ancient pottery, uh, tools, and coins, they were all from a long time ago. That's one thing that they have in common. And the second thing that they have in common were that they were all made by humans and they had a purpose. Tools were made by humans to make jobs easier. Pottery was made by humans to store things or to eat things with, right? And then coins were made by humans as a form of currency. So they were all used a long time ago and they were all used to do something, right? They all had a function. They were all made by humans. So that's what an artifact is, a historical object that was made by humans in the past, especially ones that are historically important. And this can be assumed from the three examples we had, and they all have those things in common. That's how we know what an artifact is. Now we have our fifth strategy, which is inference clues. This last strategy requires logic to assume the definition of a word. This should be used when no definition is given, no synonym is given, no antonym is given, and no examples are given. So far we have learned definition clues, synonym clues, antonym clues, and example clues. Now let's say we don't have any of these. We need to infer, we need to assume something. So let's practice with this example. After staying up all night studying, he was lethargic, that's our keyword, lethargic, and he struggled to keep his eyes open in class. Now, uh based on just pure logic, just assumptions, without any definition, synonym, antonyms, or examples, you need to figure out what lethargic means. This might be a hard one, so discuss with those around you what you think lethargic means and how you assume the definition. You get 2 minutes for this. Starting now. You're 1 minute through. Make sure you write down what lethargic means and why you think that based on the sentence given. Okay, let's move on. The answer is that lethargic means extremely tired, slow, or lacking energy. We can assume this because we already know that he stayed up all night. The sentence says after staying up all night studying. This means his body did not get any rest because he did not sleep, right? He was also struggling to keep his eyes open, meaning he was sleepy. Here it says he struggled to keep his eyes open in class. It's not because he's bored, it's because he stayed up all night studying. He didn't get any rest. Therefore, lethargic means extremely tired, slow, or lacking energy. Based on there were no examples, definitions, synonyms, or antonyms. Based on the situation, we were able to guess what lethargic means. That is what inference clues are. Let's go to the next slide. Here, read, guess, and notice clues. This is a think aloud model. Okay, here's the sentence. The comedian's remarks were so absurd that the audience burst into laughter. I'm going to read the sentence and say my thinking out loud the way a strong reader does in their head by slowing down and using the clues that are given to me by the sentence. First, I noticed the word absurd. The comedian's remarks were so absurd. Let's pretend I don't know what it means. I don't panic and I don't skip the word. I look at the rest of the sentence. I see the word comedian. Here it says comedian's remarks. Comedians are supposed to be funny. I also see that the audience burst into laughter because it was absurd. Here it says at the end the audience burst into laughter, and it was because the remarks were absurd. So the absurd remarks caused the laughter. If people are laughing, then the remarks must have been silly, ridiculous, or funny. Even without a definition, I can make a smart guess. Based on the context clues, absurd means something ridiculous or very silly. So, this is the thought process of how we guess what absurd means in this sentence. Here are some common mistakes. Some mistakes that are often made when a sentence has an unfamiliar word are skipping the word. One reason students skip the word is because they're afraid of getting it wrong. However, skipping a word usually creates more confusion, not less. When you avoid the word, you lose part of the sentence's meaning. Strong readers face the word and work through it using context clues so that the sentence is completely understood. Guessing without using the context clues in the sentence, there's a difference between guessing and guessing smartly. Random guessing sounds like, I don't know, maybe it means happy. A smart guess uses evidence from the sentence. You should be able to prove why you think the word means what it does. If someone asks you, you should be able to say, I think it means this because. So basically, you should be able to explain why. Another example of a mistake is reading too fast. Context clues don't work if we rush. I'm going to reread the sentence slowly and listen for the meaning. Sometimes the clues sometimes the clues hidden in the second half of the sentence. So remember, never guess without evidence. You can't point to a clue in the sentence. If you can't point to a clue in the sentence, then you're not done yet. That rule alone will make you a better reader. I'll read it out loud so that you remember. Never guess without evidence. If you can't show the clue in the sentence, then you're not done yet. Here, review strategies. Use the strategies you have learned so far to identify the definitions of unfamiliar words in the following sentences. The bold words are the ones you should be identifying the meanings of. Take around 10 minutes for this. Since there are 7 examples, I think 10 minutes should be enough. I will read these for you, but you can start guessing. The dessert was so delectable that no one left a single bite behind. Despite the heavy rain, the hikers remained resolute and didn't give up while hiking the mountain. The dog was so timid that it hid behind the bush and avoided everyone. Her tone was sarcastic, saying one thing but clearly meaning the opposite. The scientist looked at the data meticulously, checking every detail before sharing the results. The old house looked dilapidated, with broke windows, peeling paint, and a sagging roof. His response was short and curt, ending the conversation quickly. So you see these darker words: delectable, resolute, timid, sarcastic, meticulously, dilapidated, and curt. The darker words are the ones that you need to find the definitions of. Start now. Okay, because we don't have much time left, let's move on and I'll explain the meanings of each word. First, the dessert was so delectable that no one left a single bite behind. Let's look closely at what happens in this sentence. The word delectable might be unfamiliar, so let's look for clues. The key clue is the reaction, no one left a single bite behind. That tells us about how people felt about the dessert. If people finish every bite, that usually means they enjoyed it. This means that it tasted really good, making them want to finish it all. So even though the sentence doesn't define the word directly, it shows us based on the meaning. Based on that reaction, The de- the delectable. Okay, based on that reaction, delectable must mean very tasty or delicious. This is an inference context clue because we used what happened in the sentence to figure out the word. We didn't have any synonyms, antonyms, definitions, or examples. We used our logic to make an inference. An inference is an assumption, it's when you assume something. 2. Despite the heavy rain, the hikers remained resolute and didn't give up while hiking up the mountain. The word resolute might be unfamiliar, so let's look for clues. The sentence begins with despite the heavy rain. We know that it's hard to walk in heavy rain. Anyone would go inside. This tells us that the conditions were difficult. Then it says the hikers didn't give up. This phrase is the biggest clue. If someone didn't give up when something is hard, they're showing determination. So the sentence doesn't give us a dictionary definition, but it shows us the meaning through actions. Based on these clues, resolute means determined and unwilling to quit in challenging situations. This is an inference context clue as well as definition clue because not giving up is half the definition, and we inferred the rest through our knowledge about that the conditions were challenging and required determination. This one is the sentence about the dog. Let's look at what the sentence shows us. The word timid might be unfamiliar, so we look for clues. The sentence tells us that the dog hid behind the bush. Hiding is something you do when you feel scared or unsure. It also says the dog avoided everyone. Avoiding people is another strong clue. So the sentence doesn't directly define the word, it shows us the behavior. If a dog hides and avoids people, it is not confident or bold. Based on these clues, timid means shy, nervous, and or afraid. This is an inference context clue because we used actions in the sentence to figure out the meaning. The action was that the dog hid and avoided everyone. We can take that to mean that timid means shy, nervous, and or afraid. This next one is about tone being sarcastic. Let's slow down and look at how the sentence helps us. The word sarcastic might be unfamiliar, but in this sentence, the author actually explains the word for us. Right after the meaning, right after the word sarcastic, the sentence says, saying one thing but clearly meaning the opposite. That's what the end of the sentence says, right? This phrase tells us exactly what sarcastic means, so we don't have to guess or infer. The definition is built right into the sentence. When someone says one thing but means the opposite in a mocking way, they are being sarcastic. This is an example of definition context clue because the sentence directly explains the meaning of the word. Here it's separated by a comma. The meaning of the word is saying one thing but clearly meaning the opposite. And it is often used in, sarcasm is often used when you're trying to be rude and it's often insincere. Number 5. The scientists looked at the data meticulously, checking every detail before sharing the result. The word meticulously might be unfamiliar, so we check for clues. Right after the word, the sentence says, checking every detail. That phrase explains the manner in which the scientists work. If someone checks every detail, they're working carefully and thoroughly. So the sentence doesn't use a dictionary definition, but it gives us a clear explanation. Based on this clue, meticulously means very carefully, paying close attention to details. This is a definition style context clue because the sentence explains the word's meaning. The whole house looked dilapidated, with broke windows, peeling paint, and a sagging roof. The word dilapidated might be unfamiliar, so let's look for clues. Right after the word, the author gives us a list. The list says broken windows, peeling paint, and a sagging roof. All of these details describe a building that is not in good condition. These examples help us picture the house. So even though the sentence doesn't directly define the word, it shows us what it looks like. The list of examples all point to the house looking very run down and ruined. Therefore, based on these examples, dilapidated means old, run down, or falling apart. This is example style context clue because the word is explained by listing details. These details in the list were all examples, and we had to look for what they all have in common, and based on that, we guessed what dilapidated means. Number seven, this is the last one. His response was short and curt, ending the conversation quickly. Let's slow down and examine this sentence. The word curt might be unfamiliar, so let's look for clues. This sentence tells us the response was short. That's an important clue. It also says that the response ended the conversation quickly. It says that at the end, right? Ending the conversation quickly. Suggests that the response wasn't friendly or detailed. If someone gives a short response that shuts down a conversation, it usually sounds blunt or slightly rude. So even though the sentence doesn't give a dictionary definition, it shows us the meaning through description. Based on these clues, curt means brief and not very polite. This is a synonym and inference context clue because the sentence tells us a similar word and the situation to explain its meaning. Here is the similar word, which is short, and the situation was ending the conversation quickly, which is rude. And that's how it's a synonym and inference context clue. We used the synonym and we inferred based on the situation. Final review and closing. Context clues help readers read faster. They allow readers to quickly infer the meaning of a word. If you use context clues more often instead of skipping words, your vocabulary will grow. Practice builds confidence. Every example you read today gave you enough clues to infer the definition or phrase. Okay, of a word or phrase. So basically, every example you read today you had enough clues to guess the definitions of the word or phrase, and the more you read, the easier it gets. That's how strong readers grow. Because if you have an unfamiliar word and you know how to use the clues to guess the meaning of the word, then you'll become a better reader. That's the end of today's class. I hope you enjoyed it. If you didn't understand something, make sure to go back to the video. And if this video was either too fast or if 2 minutes, remember how I gave 2 minutes for each question? If that was too long, then let me know in the next class whether you need me to speed up or slow down. Uh, Let me know any questions you have in the next class.